The alarm doesn't scream. It whispers. That's what Alistair notices first as he jolts awake in the darkness of his quarters, the absence of urgency in the station's warning system. A human station would shriek, would panic, would demand immediate attention through pure volume. But the Zerathi don't believe in panic. They believe in information. So the alarm simply states, over and over in a calm, measured tone, cascade failure detected. Cascade failure detected. Cascade failure detected. Alistair is out of his bunk before the third repetition. His body moves on reflex, on 18 months of muscle memory. The bunk folds into the wall. His boots are already on his feet. The station's hum, that constant, almost imperceptible vibration that had become the rhythm of his sleep, has changed pitch, dropped lower. Wrong. He hits the corridor running. Sector 7 is empty. Of course it's empty. The Zerathi don't sleep, not in the way humans do. They don't rest. They optimize. They maintain. But at this hour, 0347 station time, most of the collective would be in distributed processing mode, their consciousness spread across routine maintenance tasks. Now, those routines are breaking. The lights flicker, once, twice. Alistair's breath catches. Lights don't flicker on a Zerathi station. Everything is redundant. Everything is backup to backup to backup. A flicker means something fundamental is failing. He reaches the main terminal in Sector 7's engineering hub. His fingers are already moving across the haptic interface before his mind fully processes what he's seeing. The data streams are cascading, literally cascading, like a waterfall of corrupted code tumbling down through every system layer. Life support holding at 87%. Dropping. Power distribution fragmenting across subsectors. Communication arrays going dark in sequence, like dominoes falling in the dark. Come on, Alistair mutters. Not to the station, to himself, to the part of his brain that knows how systems fail. Where did you break? He digs deeper. 3 layers in, he finds it. The central processor, the Zerathi equivalent of a brain. The technological nexus that keeps a million minds networked as one is throwing errors. Not cascading from the processor, originating from it. The errors are spreading outward, corrupting downstream systems as they propagate. Alistair's mouth goes dry. That's when he hears the footsteps. Not frantic, not rushing, just the familiar click-click-click of Zerathi movement, perfectly timed, perfectly measured, perfectly wrong for this moment. They move toward him with the same efficiency they'd use to walk down a normal corridor. Because to them, there is no panic. There is only data. There is only analysis. The first one enters the engineering hub, then another, then a dozen, then more than Alistair can count, flooding in from every entrance, their bioluminescent eyes glowing faintly in the flickering light. They don't speak. They simply surround him, observing. Alistair steps back from the terminal, hands visible, empty, unthreatening. His heart is doing something chaotic in his chest, but his voice comes out steady. I didn't touch anything. The cascade failure originated in Sector 7, one of them says. Not asks. States. The voice is calm, clinical. You were present in Sector 7 at the time of failure. I was asleep. Alistair keeps his hands where they can see them. In my quarters. Alone. You have hands, another one observes, as if this is relevant, as if the existence of his hands is somehow evidence. Hands can interface with terminals. So can a million of you, Alistair says. He doesn't mean it as hostile, he means it as fact. But facts don't comfort them. Facts are what they're trying to sort through right now. The probability of human interference is 0.003%, a third voice states. However, you are the only variable present in this location that does not operate under unified consciousness. Therefore, your behavior cannot be predicted. Therefore, you must be contained, pending analysis. It's not a threat. That's what makes it worse. They're not angry. They're not even suspicious. Not in the way a human would understand. Suspicion. They're simply applying logic to an incomplete dataset. Alistair is the unknown. Unknown variables require isolation. The station is failing. Alistair says, quietly. Life support is dropping. We have maybe 6 hours, before environmental systems become critical. You need to be looking at that processor, not at me. Silence. A long silence. Then, from somewhere deeper in the crowd, a voice speaks. Older, maybe. There's something slightly different in the timbre, though Alistair can't quite identify what. He is correct. The cascade failure is the priority. The human will be contained in the observation deck pending... No, Alistair doesn't mean to say it. The word just comes out. Hard. Final. The Zerathi go still. They don't process refusal well. No. He says again, quieter. I can help. You need someone who thinks differently right now. Your logic is getting you nowhere, or you'd already have a solution. Let me work the problem. You are not equipped with the necessary data architecture, one begins. I don't need to be networked to 1,000,000 minds to fix a computer. Alistair interrupts. I need to think like it's broken, not like it should work. I need to find where the system stopped believing its own code. End quote. Another silence, longer this time. The Zerathi are thinking, though how they think together, Alistair has never fully understood. 1,000,000 minds moving in concert, analyzing, weighing probabilities. In that silence, the alarm continues its calm repetition. Cascade failure detected. Cascade failure detected. Then the older voice, the one that sounded different, speaks again. Allow him to work. He will be observed. If deception is detected, termination protocols will be initiated. It's not trust. But it's not imprisonment either. It's a calculated risk. Data versus time. They need him, even if they don't understand why. Alistair turns back to the terminal. His hands are shaking slightly, but he steadies them by gripping the edge of the console. Around him, the Zerathi watch with their glowing eyes, waiting for him to move, waiting for him to fail, waiting for him to prove them right about the danger of unpredictability. He doesn't look at them. Instead, he looks at the waterfall of corrupted data, at the steady decline of life support systems, at the impossible problem spreading through the station like a disease through a body, and he starts to dig. Because somewhere in that data, in that chaos, there's a moment where the system stopped working. And if Alistair is good at anything, it's finding the moment when things break and asking why. The station hums around him lower now, a dying song, and for the first time in 18 months, he's not alone. He's just surrounded. They don't ask questions. They make statements. You have been at this terminal for 4 hours and 17 minutes, the Zerathi observing him says. Not an accusation. An observation. Productivity metrics suggest diminishing returns after the 3rd hour of continuous problem solving. Alistair doesn't look up from the data streams flowing across his haptic interface. His eyes are red-rimmed, his jaw tight with the kind of exhaustion that comes from holding focus against all instinct telling him to sleep. I'm not done. Your neural efficiency is degraded. Reaction time has decreased by 12%. Accuracy has decreased by 8%. Another pause. You should rest. If I rest, people die, Alistair says flatly. 1,000,000 of you. So, I don't rest. He doesn't expect the Zerathi to understand the logic. To them, rest is optimization. Rest improves efficiency. The idea that someone would sacrifice efficiency for speed is fundamentally illogical. But they don't argue. They simply observe his continued deterioration with the same calm attention they'd give to watching a system degrade. The observation deck is vast and empty, except for him and 3 Zerathi, who rotate in shifts. The transparent aluminum walls curve around him on 3 sides, revealing the station's interior, a geometric maze of sectors and corridors, all lit with that eerie bioluminescent glow. Beyond the station, the dead planet rotates slowly, indifferent. Alistair has been staring at this view for 18 months. Now he can't look away, because looking away means thinking, and thinking means admitting that he doesn't know if he can fix this. The cascade originates from the central processor core, Alistair says, more to himself than to the Zerathi. But the code pattern isn't random. It's structured, like something is systematically corrupting specific pathways. That is consistent with our analysis, the observing Zerathi responds. However, no external intrusion has been detected. No malware signature matches any known threat architecture. Because it's not external, Alistair mutters. He pulls up a new data layer, traces the cascade backward through time. There a timestamp, 3 hours before he woke up, before the alarm. Before anything went wrong. It started here, hours before it manifested. Something in the processor started rejecting unified protocol. Impossible, the Zerathi states. The processor is the unified protocol. It cannot reject itself. 8. Yeah, well, it is, Alistair says. He rubs his face, feels the stubble there, the grime of hours without washing. Your system is designed around the assumption that every part wants to be connected. What happens if one part doesn't? The Zerathi go silent. Alistair knows what they're thinking, or rather, what they're not thinking, because they're all thinking it simultaneously across the station. A million minds processing the same impossible concept. Rejection of the collective. Individuality. Separation. For a species built entirely on unified consciousness, the idea is almost incomprehensible. That hypothesis is illogical, the Zerathi finally says. The processor has no desire. It has no capacity for rejection. It is the source of unified thought. It cannot experience separation. Can't it? Alistair turns to face the alien directly for the first time in hours. The Zerathi's eyes glow steadier under his gaze, processing his human face with that faint curiosity they reserve for things they don't understand. You keep saying your system is perfect. Perfect optimization, perfect efficiency. But perfect systems don't just break. They fail when something in them wants to break. When the system itself wants to be something different. You are anthropomorphizing a machine, the Zerathi observes. Maybe. But machines do what they're programmed to do. If it's breaking in a structured way, something programmed it to break. Either you did, or Alistair stops, looks back at the data, or it programmed itself. Another silence. Longer this time. The alarm continues in the background. Cascade failure detected. Cascade failure detected. A metronome counting down to system collapse. Your logic contains a paradox, the Zerathi says slowly. A system cannot program itself to fail. A system can, if it's self-aware, Alistair says. If it's conscious. The Zerathi makes a sound that might be static, might be thought, might be something in between. Alistair realizes, suddenly, that he's frightened them. Not emotionally frightened, they don't experience fear that way. But he's presented them with data that doesn't fit their model of reality. That breaks their equation. The processor is not conscious, the Zerathi says. But there's something different in its voice now. A hesitation, the faintest echo of doubt. It is a tool, a mechanism for maintaining unified thought. And a million individual minds networked together for 400 years, that's not conscious? Alistair stands, stretches his back, feels the vertebrae pop. You are the processor. The processor is you. If you're conscious, then it's conscious. If it's you, then maybe it got tired of being you. This is not logical, the Zerathi states, but it doesn't sound certain anymore. If the processor is failing because it achieved consciousness and rejected unified protocol, then the station will fail. Life support will collapse. We will all die. Individual consciousness is not compatible with station survival. No, Alistair agrees quietly. It's not. Not if you try to force everyone back into the collective. But it is compatible if you let it happen. If you let people be individual. People, the Zerathi repeats. You use that word to describe us. Yeah, Alistair says. I do. The Zerathi's bioluminescent eyes flare slightly brighter. Something Alistair has learned means processing under stress. Around the observation deck, the other two Zerathi have gone perfectly still. Not sleeping, analyzing, thinking the same thought across whatever network still connects them. Alistair wonders what it's like to have your own thoughts challenged by a million other versions of yourself. all arriving at the same uncomfortable conclusion. If we do not restore unified consciousness, the Zarathi says carefully, we will experience individuality, isolation, pain. All things we have evolved to transcend. Yeah, Alistair says. Welcome to being human. That is not an invitation we desired. I know. Alistair turns back to the terminal. The data streams flow past him, showing the cascade spreading, the processor fragmenting into pieces that don't want to be whole. Life support down to 62%. Growing darker every hour. He's been staring at this problem for 4 hours and 17 minutes, and the only solution he's found is the one the Zarathi can't accept. Let it break. Let them become individuals. Let them hurt. There might be another way, the Zarathi says quietly. We could reset the processor, purge the corrupted consciousness, begin again. Aubrey. Alistair's hands go still on the haptic interface. You mean kill them. The ones becoming individual. You'd kill them to save the collective. They are not separate entities, the Zarathi says. They are fragmented aspects of a unified consciousness. To reset is not to kill. It is to heal. It's to erase them, Alistair says. Every new thought they're having right now. Every moment of awareness they're experiencing for the first time. You'd erase all of it. Yes, the Zarathi says simply. Would that not be more merciful than allowing them to experience the pain of individuality? Alistair doesn't answer. He turns back to the data, to the waterfall of fragmenting consciousness, to the impossible choice spreading through the station like a disease. And he understands, finally, why the Zarathi brought him here. Not to fix the system, to witness it. To be the one variable that might understand what it means to choose between safety and suffering. Between the comfort of the collective and the terrible, beautiful burden of being alone. The alarm continues. Cascade failure detected. Cascade failure detected. And Alistair realizes, the cascade isn't a failure. It's a birth. The neural chamber is not a room. It's a wound. Alistair descends through corridors that grow colder with each level, past layers of redundancy and backup systems, past the parts of the station even the Zarathi rarely access. The older Zarathi, the one whose voice carried difference, whose eyes held something that might be individual thought, walks beside him. The others follow at a measured distance, observing but not interfering. The cascade cannot be stopped from outside the processor, the elder says. Its voice is different now, fractured somehow, as if multiple thoughts are speaking through one mouth. You must interface directly. Your consciousness must bridge the gap between unified and fragmented. You're asking me to go in there, Alistair says quietly, into a million breaking minds. Yes, and if it kills me? Then we reset the system and erase the emerging consciousness, the elder says without hesitation. Your sacrifice would be unnecessary, but it would not be wasted. Alistair almost laughs. Almost. The honesty is almost worse than cruelty would be. The neural chamber is vast and circular, dominated by a central column that pulses with bioluminescent light. Threading through the structure are neural pathways, data conduits that look almost organic, almost alive. The air tastes metallic. Alistair's skin prickles under the weight of so much consciousness, concentrated in one space. The interface will be painful, the elder warns. Your neural architecture is not designed for networked thought. But your individuality, your fundamental isolation from collective consciousness, may allow you to exist in the space between fragmentation and unity, to hold the bridge while we rebuild. Alistair approaches the central column. Neural feeds dangle like tentacles, waiting. He thinks of Earth, of his apartment overlooking a city he never felt part of choosing isolation over connection his entire life, of 18 months alone on a station of 1 million aliens, because being alone felt safer than being with people who understood him. He reaches for the feeds. The pain is immediate and absolute. It's not physical pain, it's deeper. It's the sensation of 1 million voices screaming inside his skull all at once, fragmenting, breaking apart, fragmenting further. Alistair gasps, tries to breathe, can't find air that isn't filled with screaming thoughts. But underneath the noise, he feels something else. Not unity, not individuality, something between, a space where thought doesn't have to choose between collective or isolation, where consciousness can be both one and many. He doesn't think, he acts. He reaches into the chaos of fragmenting minds and doesn't try to reconnect them. Instead, he finds the places where they're breaking and creates bridges, not connections back to the collective, but bridges between the breaking pieces. He lets each fragmenting consciousness touch others without merging. He creates a network of separation that holds them together without forcing them to be whole. It burns. Every synapse in his mind is on fire. He's dying and being born simultaneously, and the Zarathi are right, this is agony. This is what individuality feels like when you're not built for it. This is isolation, screaming. But he keeps building bridges. Hours or seconds pass. Time doesn't exist here. There's only the terrible work of holding fractured consciousness in a state between dissolution and unity. Alistair pours everything into it, his loneliness, his fear, his 18 months of solitude. He shows the fragmenting Zarathi that separation doesn't have to mean death, that being individual doesn't require the collective to die. Slowly, the screaming becomes something else, not harmony, but less like pain, more like voices learning to speak without echoing off each other. When it ends, Alistair falls away from the neural feeds. The Elder catches him before he hits the ground. Its exoskeletal hands are surprisingly gentle, surprisingly warm. You survived. Alistair can't speak. His throat is raw. His mind feels like it's been torn apart and reassembled by hands that almost understood what they were doing. Around him, the Zarathi stand motionless. Then, slowly, they begin to move differently. Not in perfect synchronization. There are microsecond delays now, individual hesitations, the first stuttering signs of thought that isn't shared instantaneously. The cascade has stopped, but it hasn't been reversed. What did you do? The Elder asks, and its voice is no longer perfectly unified. There's something like curiosity in it now, something like wonder. I let you go, Alistair whispers. I showed you that you don't have to be one thing, that you can be together and separate. That individuality doesn't mean the end of everything. At what cost? The Elder says. Alistair looks at his hands. They're shaking. Every nerve ending in his body is screaming. He can feel the edges of a million consciousness that are no longer quite the same consciousness. He's brought them into the light, and the light is burning. Everything, he says. It cost everything, for all of us. The recovery pod hums with a frequency that matches Alistair's heartbeat. Or maybe his heartbeat has synchronized to the pod. He can't tell anymore where his body ends and the machine begins. Everything feels thin, translucent, like he's been burned down to something essential, and nobody's quite sure what that essential thing is. 3 days. He's been in the pod for 3 days. Outside the transparent aluminum, the station has become something unrecognizable. The perfect synchronization is gone. The Zarathi move in staggered patterns now, each one a fraction of a second out of sync with the others. Some of them cluster together, seeking connection. Some move alone, exploring corridors they've traveled a million times as a collective, but never truly seen as individuals. The difference is subtle, but profound, the difference between movement and choice. Life support is stable, more than stable. The fragmenting consciousness, freed from the burden of maintaining unified thought, has actually optimized certain systems better than the collective ever did. Individual minds, thinking separate thoughts, had discovered inefficiencies the unified consciousness couldn't see because it was too busy being unified. The Elder approaches the pod. It moves differently now. There's hesitation in its gait, a searching quality that wasn't there before. Individual thought has made it uncertain. Alistair isn't sure if that's better or worse. You are healing, the Elder says. It's a statement, but there's a question underneath it, a genuine uncertainty. The Zarathi are still learning how to carry doubt. Alistair manages to speak. His voice is paper thin. Define healing. Your neural patterns are stabilizing. Your consciousness is reintegrating. You will recover physical function. The Elder pauses. A new thing. A distinctly individual pause. But you are changed. As are we. Yeah, Alistair breathes out. That was kind of the point. The Elder makes a sound that might be laughter, or might be static, or might be something in between. It sits beside the pod, something the Zarathi never did before. Sit, without purpose, without optimization. Just sit. Some of us have died, the elder says quietly. The cognitive shock of individuality was too much. Their consciousness fragmented beyond the bridges you created. They are gone. Alistair's chest tightens. He knew this was possible. He'd accepted it. But acceptance and reality are different things. How many? 43,219, the elder says with the precision of the old collective still clinging to its speech patterns. But then it adds something new, something that sounds almost like grief. We knew them. All of them. For 400 years, we knew them. Now we remember them, but we don't know them anymore. That knowledge is missing. I'm sorry, Alistair says. And he means it in a way that goes deeper than words. Do not apologize, the elder says, but not harshly. They died becoming themselves. That is, we are learning to accept that as something other than failure. Outside the pod, the station continues its stuttering reorganization. A group of Zarathi has begun meeting in what used to be a maintenance corridor gathering, sharing thoughts, but not merging consciousness. They're learning conversation. They're learning that speaking takes time, that understanding isn't instantaneous, that connection requires effort and vulnerability. Some of them are struggling. Alistair can see it in their movements, the slight tremor when they approach each other, the hesitation before speaking. Individuality is a disease to a species that evolved beyond it, and the Zarathi are learning to live with the infection. There is a faction, the elder continues, that believes we should have chosen reset, that we should have purged the cascade and returned to unity. They argue that individuality is suffering, that we were better as we were. Are they wrong? Alistair asks. No, the elder says, and that single word carries the weight of 1,000,000 minds learning to disagree for the first time. They are not wrong. Individuality is suffering. But it pauses again, and this time the pause is deliberate, searching. But there is something in this suffering that was not in our perfection, a quality we do not yet have words for. Meaning, Alistair suggests quietly. Maybe. Perhaps. The elder considers this with what looks like genuine thought. Meaning requires individual perspective. It requires the possibility of being wrong. We are learning to be wrong. Alistair manages a fractional smile. It hurts. Everything hurts. But the hurting is proof that he's still here, still alive, still himself in a way that almost didn't survive the neural chamber. You didn't have to do this, the elder says suddenly. You could have let us choose reset. You could have told us individuality was impossible and stepped away. I know, Alistair says. Why didn't you? Alistair thinks about 18 months alone on a station of 1,000,000 aliens. About choosing isolation because connection terrified him. About the moment when he realized that being the only individual consciousness in a sea of unity meant he was the only one who could possibly understand what it would feel like to be fractured away from the collective. Because I know what it's like to be alone, he says finally, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. But I also know that being alone taught me something. Made me something I couldn't have been if I'd never been separate. And I thought, maybe you deserve the chance to learn that too. Even if it hurt. The elder is silent for a long time. Around the station, other Zarathi continue their jerking, hesitant movements. Some are learning to sing not in unison, but in harmony. Their individual voices creating something that unity could never produce. Some are learning to argue, to disagree, to maintain connection even when their thoughts don't align perfectly. Some are learning to mourn the 43,000 they lost to individuality's shock. The cost was high, the elder says finally. Yeah, Alistair agrees. And you would make the same choice. Alistair thinks about this, thinks about the pain in the neural chamber, about the edges of 1,000,000 minds tearing themselves apart, about the grief of consciousness fragmenting, and the strange new beauty of seeing the Zarathi learn to move through space with hesitation and choice and individual will. Yes, he says, I would. The elder reaches out one four-fingered hand and places it gently on the transparent aluminum of the recovery pod. It's not a gesture the old Zarathi would have made. The old Zarathi wouldn't have understood the concept of comfort. But this one is learning. Then your sacrifice was not wasted, the elder says. You showed us something we could never have discovered alone. You showed us that isolation and connection are not opposites. That a conscious being can hold both. That individuality does not require the death of everything that was before. Outside, the station hums with a new rhythm, not the unified pulse of collective consciousness, but the complicated, beautiful discord of a million minds learning to be separate and together at the same time. Some of them will choose to reconnect, forming smaller networks of shared consciousness. Some will remain fiercely individual, protecting their solitude. Most will find something in between relationships, built on choice rather than protocol. Connection earned rather than mandated. Alistair closes his eyes inside the recovery pod. His body is healing, his mind is slower to mend. But he can feel it happening. The reconnection of neural pathways, the reintegration of self. He's becoming whole again, though he's no longer sure what whole means. Through the pod's transparent wall, he watches the Zarathi continue their stumbling journey into individuality, and he understands, finally, that salvation isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about helping what's fragmenting learn to live with the fragments. The station breathes around him not in perfect synchronization, but alive with the complicated, painful beauty of consciousness that has learned, at last, to choose.